That is the hardest part of that ring.
For the hardest part of the ring.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the hardest part of the ring.
Hello and welcome to episode 158 of Hardest Part of the Ring, the podcast where four friends get together to celebrate the wonder of professional wrestling. Fleetingly, four friends get together to do that because today there are just three of us. Again, we were meant to be doing a quiz. It couldn't happen because one of our number couldn't make it. He had a good reason. Who's it going to be? Everybody knows. Brett's not here. Sam is here. Hi, Sam.
Hello, Adam. How are you?
I'm good. I'm pretty pumped. And I think you are too, but we'll get to that. John, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you guys?
We're well. Sam and I
buzzing.
have just done a load of exercise separately.
But thinking about each other the whole time.
Yeah. So we should explain. We were supposed to do the quiz. Last minute yesterday, Brett said that he couldn't record because of a diary clash, even though we always record the podcast on Tuesdays. So, you know, it's every other Tuesday, I guess. So we're not doing the quiz. And I then booked to do a boot camp exercise thing, and Sam arranged to go to the gym. So we're doing it post-exercise, which might be the first time. So we've got those endorphins buzzing. It's like we've just done an Ironman match together. And John's just been reffing it, basically.
A lot of people call me the Mark Henry of Iron Man matches.
Do you reckon he ever did an Iron Man match?
I like to think that he's still doing one to this very day.
Did you see he's moving? It looks like he's moving off comms, and he's just going to be doing backstage stuff.
Bit sad about that. I quite liked Mark Henry on comms.
He's got a great voice. It
I've
feels
really
warm and comforting.
come round on him.
Yeah.
Big fan of his now.
Okay. Anyway, that sort of is a little taste of what we're going to do, because that is some topical wrestling news. And today we are going to talk about some news, a few of the stories that caught our eye, as well as the main talking point, which is going to be the recent Dark Side of the Ring episode. The last podcast we did was the AEW All Out 2021 review, which got a 9.18. Sam, you weren't there for it. You gave it a 10 out of 10. Do you still stand behind that?
I stand by that. I was discussing this pay-per-view with friends who are lapsed wrestling fans quite recently, and all of them were like, I watched this and absolutely loved it. And I think kind of that justifies it more than anything, is the fact that I feel like it was a pay-per-view that kind of extended beyond just your standard wrestling fans.
Yeah, it's interesting whether this will become one of those pay-per-views that all those Laps fans suddenly turn on to on a regular basis, like start watching.
I think so. I mean, to be honest, I think the big criticism of it, I would say, is kind of the matches themselves. Other than the tag team match, the quality of them was good, maybe not the absolute best, but I think kind of I stand by a 10 on this, just because I honestly think that, like, a wrestling show is more than just its wrestling matches, and
yeah.
I think this absolutely smashed it in every department. And like, if I think back to like what would be my perfect dream pay-per-view, anything with CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Minoru Suzuki, John Moxley, I mean, what a win.
I suppose even if you go back to like WrestleMania 17, you know, the classic 17, everyone loves it. There's some absolute stinking matches on that card.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
it will go down as an all-time classic, obviously for AEW, but I think just in wrestling, because it's seismic what's happened. And obviously we're going to talk about some of the fallout from that in terms of one of the little news stories that we're going to discuss, and we'll get to that and Dark Side of the Ring after this.
Oh, good Lord. Emerald Frozen Lord on the apron. He is a bad boy.
And ladies and gentlemen, that apron is not to play with. It's not to be trifled with or wrestled on.
Okay, let's kick things off then with Dark Side of the Ring, which is obviously a documentary series that is... Where does it... It's a Vice documentary series.
Yeah, it's Vice TV. And
it's
kind of narrated by Jericho. I don't think the first season was. I think it was narrated by someone else, but...
The first two seasons are on 4OD. Third season isn't yet, is it?
No.
Any standout episodes from previous seasons, just in case there's anybody listening who hasn't watched any?
I quite like the one about New Jack. I thought that was really interesting, because New Jack is crazy, and yeah, they capture it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, they've got the Montreal screw job in season 1, killing of Bruiser Brody.
Bruiser Brody one's brilliant.
The Von Erich family story.
Oh, that's really
That's a
dark as
tough
well.
watch. The Von Erich family.
That's a
Come
good
on.
one though, because it's such an incredibly dark story, but it is a fascinating story.
Season 2, they've got a 2-parter on Chris Benoit.
I haven't
They've
got
got
myself
Jimmy
to watch that yet.
Jimmy Snooker episodes. They cover all. I mean,
All the
you
good
think
stuff.
That just generally talking about wrestling, we touch upon some dark subjects, but it gets very, very dark in these episodes.
In a few years' time, they're going to do one on SummerSlam 2021.
I meant to say, actually, obviously, AEW was our highest ever rated pay-per-view, and it came literally in the podcast episode after our lowest ever rated pay-per-view. That's just mad, that the ups and downs at the moment. But anyway, Dark Side of the Ring documentary series. But, I mean, it's been in the news every so often. It's whatever the subject matter that they're talking about has sort of escaped from wrestling Twitter and have got other people talking about stuff.
Yeah.
But the most recent episode in particular seems to have made a few headlines.
I'm not sure how I feel about Dark Side of the Ring with this kind of stuff, because like part of me is like, the world should know how bad this stuff can be, and then part of me is like, you're making.
You sound like
this
Tommy Dreamer a bit.
I was gonna say that part of it is like that, but then part of it is also like kind of, you're making this TV show to make money based off.
Yeah, I suppose they're there to entertain, aren't they?
I don't
Get
know.
more shows. It's good for them to. I mean, is it good for them? I don't know if they're.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't feel like it's wholly altruistic. Wholly altruistic? Altruistic? If I just say it
altruistic.
enough times, we'll just eventually get the right pronunciation of it. I'm not sure if it's coming from the goodness of their hearts.
No, maybe not. But I mean, they're doing them because they're good stories at the end of the day, right? That's probably why they started doing this stuff.
I suppose, yeah. It's just kind of, it's definitely, like, you got to feel for this flight attendant.
Oh my god!
I did feel a bit weird with the whole Jericho commentating, because it does feel a bit like, oh, here he is getting a paycheck as he fucking, buries a load of his old colleagues. But then if his old colleagues are absolute arseholes, then, what's the harm in it, I suppose?
I can't believe Jericho wasn't actually on the plane, but
So there were like 2 flights.
For anybody who doesn't know, because I imagine there'll be people who haven't had a chance to watch it yet, they may have just heard that Ric Flair's been a bit of a perv and they're not sure what the full story is. It's season 3, episode 8, aired on September the 16th, and it's called The Plane Ride from Hell. And the little synopsis that they give is: a private 757 flight descended into a nightmare as intoxicated wrestlers clash with their flight crew, erupting into one of wrestling's most infamous scandals.
I mean, that does sound like a Brett's Film Club synopsis, doesn't it?
oh, it does.
It does. And then some frogs got on board and they all had sex. This was May 2002, after a European tour. Obviously a bit of a boom period. Things were going well. Wrestlers were absolutely loving being at the WWF, or they just rebranded then.
It was literally rebranding like that very week.
Yeah. But things were looking good. There was fucking loads of money around, and they'd had their European tour. And this particular flight happened just after the Insurrection pay-per-view in London. And, they all got on the plane and they thought the flight was going to be delayed for a little bit, and ended up being delayed for 7 hours. That is a fucking long time to be sat on a plane before it's even taken off.
It's brutal.
I think I remember, like, May 2002 Insurrection in London. This was probably my biggest fandom phase of wrestling I was ever in. I took the day off school to try and get tickets to this and didn't get them.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah, ended up going to a WCW event instead.
Oh.
So what did that involve at that time? Was that like on a phone, or were you queuing?
Yeah,
at a
that
box
was on a
office
phone.
somewhere? Oh, okay.
Yeah, pretended to be sick and then was like, oh, well, time to start phoning up, and then if I get through, then I can kind of worry about the consequences afterwards. In retrospect, I now realise that my parents, one of them probably didn't go to work that day. This was kind of bad. Like, I'm having a moment of revelation here.
And as we know, your parents listen to this podcast, so...
Oh, God.
Uh-oh.
Whoopsie.
So, 7 hours on the tarmac. Apparently, they got through a cart of booze, quite quickly. And as they said, they spoke to. The main one was Heidi Doyle, who's got some big allegations coming up, but talked about the fact that they weren't just measuring these measures of alcohol, they were just free pouring. They ended up going through 3 carts of booze. There were drugs, all kinds of things going on. It sounded, it would be awful to have been on that plane.
Oh my
for
word,
me.
yeah.
Absolutely awful.
You're just trying to get some sleep, watch a bit of Netflix on your tablet. Oh.
Can't sleep because you get your head shaved or your ponytail cut off.
Sounds like such a shit stag do, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, not our kind of thing, but there are quite a few different stories that go through this episode. What should we do? Should we talk about some of the other smaller ones, or should we go for the big one first?
Should we start with, Mr. Perfect, Brock Lesnar?
That's the nice one, right?
That's probably I don't know, actually. I quite like Goldust serenading his ex-wife, but...
Oh, and the X-Pac. I like that one. Let's start with Helen and
We'll go with Mr.
So
Perfect.
what happened there? Mr. Perfect and Brock Lesnar.
The wrestling way of saying this is that Mr. Perfect was the king of the rib.
Yeah, which is a wrestling way of saying he was a fucking dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a real fucking dick to all those marks on the plane, which I suppose I don't know, everyone just came off like a prat in this episode. But, without trying to speak too ill of Mr. Perfect, since, he's no longer with us, sounds like he was a bit of a dick.
Yeah. So he put some shaving foam on Brock Lesnar's head when Brock was sleeping and then just slapped it. Which, I mean, as pranks go, could be a lot worse. It's better than getting your head shaved or something. That's a shit way to get woken up.
As a decision, out of everyone you could maybe slap on the head with shaving foam, a very young and angry Brock Lesnar is probably the last person.
He's probably still angry now, though, right?
Yeah, so there was a lot of detail about them jumping up, and basically didn't Brock pick up Mr. Perfect and was slamming him into the side of the plane, which would be pretty scary.
Yeah.
Can you just imagine that? Like, in some alternate universe, there is no WWF because, like, all of the key principal players died when one of them...
Yeah, because Vince is on the plane, isn't he?
When two wrestlers just got into a fight on a plane and smashed open a door or something.
Yeah. Well, throughout the whole narrative, throughout the whole thing, is that Vince is on the plane, but he just stays up front. And it's JR, who was head of talent relations, who's basically sent to deal with it and to calm these guys down. And again, it was interesting hearing JR on this, because you get a lot of one-on-one interview with JR discussing it and saying how he was trying to do his best. And, they're difficult to deal with. And meanwhile, Vince is just sitting up top.
Do you know what?
Poke his head round.
I would say JR is maybe the only person who comes out of this whole story sounding like a decent person.
Do you reckon he looks like he's like, well, I can't be fucked to tell this story again?
I think
he looks so pissed off by the whole process.
Sure, but I think he's pissed off because I think he got the short end of everything. He doesn't strike me as the kind of person who was taking part in these shenanigans.
Oh, absolutely not.
No, I don't think so. But so as well as that, we had some stuff with Terry Reynolds and Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes comes across not too badly, just that he was upset about the breakup of his marriage to Terry Reynolds, and then at one point he gets on the what's it called?
Intercom?
The walkie-talkie.
Intercom. On the intercom and sings a song that means a lot to their relationship or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember what the song was, but probably
that
not
wasn't
good.
that exciting.
Dustin Rhodes struck me as someone who maybe has taken too many drugs, drunk too much, and maybe has been dressing as a man dressed in gold for far too long. Just a little bit depressed.
What's terrifying about this whole thing, well, one of the many things, is that these are all really big guys. Could you imagine being around that many really, really violently drunk, 6'4", 280 odd pound men? Oh my word!
Yeah,
well, that's just where we were at the gym.
I mean, you don't have to imagine it, John. You're experiencing it right now. One of the things that was like an ongoing thing throughout the episode was Terry Reynolds talking about how often she was told to not sell it.
Yeah, that was terrifying.
Yeah.
So she talked about the fact that at one point Brock, and this wasn't on the plane, but just in the locker room, exposed himself to her. And then somebody was just like, don't sell it. And then even on the plane with the Dustin stuff, it's like, don't sell it. I love that they just, the lingo is so ingrained. It's like, don't make a big deal out of it. Don't tell anyone.
I really hate wrestling lingo so much. I like it when the fans use it. I hate it when the wrestlers use it.
I don't mind it.
I don't know. I thought Mike Chioda came across like an absolute dick.
It sounded like Mike Chioda loved this plane ride. He had a great old time.
He was laughing.
Yeah.
He was loving it. So yeah, that was one of the things Terry Reynolds sort of talking about how often she was told to not sell it when something awful happened to her or she witnessed something weird. But the main thing, I guess, is
Let's talk about the bad stuff.
To talk about Ric Flair. So, I mean, throughout the whole episode, Heidi Doyle, who was one of the cabin crew, sort of is heavily involved, isn't she, throughout, talking about all the drinking that was happening, talking about the delays, talking about just the behaviour, and talking about how she kind of enjoyed being part of it initially. But then we get to the bit where, and Tommy Dreamer is heavily involved in this, talking about Ric Flair and his party tricks. Walking down the aisle with his robe, the boys absolutely loving it as he opens up his robes, reveals that he is naked, and helicopters his hefty penis.
Yeah. It's weird he put that extra bit of, a bit of sauce on top of that description, isn't it?
It's such a weird thing. Like, I love hanging out with you guys. You guys are great fun. You do a good podcast. At no point have I ever wanted it to be like, oh, here's Brett. Dong out. Like,
you obviously have not met enough Australians.
Yeah, it's like rugby locker room.
I
mean, is this toxic masculinity? Is this a good example?
It just seems
Add it to
so
the
alien
list.
to me. Obviously, I don't have enough friends, but yeah, it's just really. It just seems really strange to me.
Yeah,
yeah, I can understand it in that environment because you hear about it happening. But yeah, I would not enjoy that. But then I would never be in that environment. But in this case, the big takeaway and the big thing that's made all the headlines on the internet, and it's got lots of people talking, and has the classic, one side saying this is outrageous, he should be cancelled, and other people going, oh, cancel culture, it happened a long time ago, is the fact that Ric Flair, allegedly, according to Heidi Doyle, was basically sort of pinned her up against a wall and made her grab his package.
I have no doubt in my mind that this happened.
no,
Like, there's no part of me that was ever like, oh, this sounds a bit suspect. Maybe she's lying. It just sounds entirely 100% in his locker room.
yep,
Yeah.
And
What's awful is that obviously a big thing from the episode is that Tommy Dreamer spends a lot of the time being like, well, boys will be boys. This is the kind of thing that happens. She was uncomfortable with it. Okay, fair enough. Right now, that shouldn't happen. But this was 20 years ago. And he just comes out terribly. And then as a result has been, suspended from Impact and busted open radio.
I was thinking it's that he then kind of says, like, yeah, one day my haircut will offend someone. And
oh
it's just
god,
like,
yeah, his double ponytail.
Mate,
I can't
just
believe you compared it to
shut
that.
up.
I thought Tommy Dreamer was one of the good guys. He seemed so
me
nice.
too. I think this is kind of
Very
like learning that
misjudged.
Ryan Giggs was a bad guy. It's just kind of like a bit of a disappointing.
He came off like a
thing.
complete dickhead in this.
Yeah. Now, we should also say, for balance, that Ric Flair put out 2 statements today. Did you see this? He put
I
out
saw one of them.
Yeah, me
which-
too.
Yeah, so the first one is basically along the lines of, okay, yeah, there was lots of locker room antics, a lot of this stuff happened, but I did not, and I never forced myself on anybody or made them touch me. And then the second statement added to it. He was like, oh, I should also clarify that helicoptering was a thing, and I kind of regret it, and it was a bad point in my life, but yeah, I did do that. I admit it. But I'd like to reiterate that I've never forced myself on anybody.
I
So
would argue that maybe he wasn't in a state to know what he did back then.
yeah. I mean, the talk of all the drugs that they were doing as well as the alcohol is mad. It's mad.
It strikes me a little bit of like Hulk Hogan coming out with like kind of everyone's a little bit racist and trying to normalize really offensive, horrible behavior. And it's just like, man, fuck this. Like, this is speaking out, but just 20, 30 years ago, just coming up now, really.
And people then going, well, it was 20, 30 years ago. That's what it was like. I mean, there's a big section in it where RVD essentially says rape was normal.
Yeah, there
is.
Because he was like, yeah, people would pass out and we'd put drugs in their drink. They'd pass out and sometimes we'd shave their head. And then, sometimes there'd be girls and the guys would just have their way with them. And it's like, do you realise what you're saying here?
He did it so deadpan as well. Like, no change of facial features whatsoever, just delivered that line.
But I think kind of he delivers that line because it's not a joke. That's legitimately what I think happened, and I think it's one of the most awful things about wrestling generally, Just hearing these stories about people you would have idolised as a kid, and then it just turns out that they were just really nasty people. Like, yeah. I'm very grateful for the current wrestling generation being more seemingly.
Well, this feels like 2002 feels really late for this sort of thing.
It does, doesn't it?
It like early 90s, like late 80s, with all the coke and sort of the big wrestlers, you'd expect this sort of stuff then, definitely. But in 2002, it feels really late. But I suppose when you look on who's on that plane, there's a lot of those old boys on there, like Kurt Hennig, Scott Hall,
Michael Hayes.
P.S. Michael Hayes.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, I mean, I think throughout the whole episode, like Heidi Doyle,
Jesus,
comes across really well, really sort of obviously courageous to do all this and say all this. But it's not like she's like, bang, this is what happened to me and it's outrageous. She admitted she enjoyed being there and, she went through all the details and it was really sort of like gracefully told.
I think the part that worried me the most was the company's reaction to when she was telling them that. And her company was just like, we respect the privacy of our clients and this is expected behaviour. And it's just like, man, how deep does the well run on this one?
Even her own husband didn't come across great, like sort of questioning what she was doing, what her involvement in it. It was weird.
Yeah. I can understand that slightly for that era, that kind of reaction a bit more than these days. And rightly so, like people feel more empowered to be like, no, fuck them. This story's coming out because what's happened is wrong. And it's maybe easier to take a company down with things like social media and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not defending him, but that kind of, it's just, anyway.
What I was going to say, just what I found really, really interesting about this is I've heard about the Plane Ride for Hell for ages. Like it's like a really famous story in wrestling. Like I've read about it. It's been on podcasts loads. And the way I've always heard it is it's always been quite like almost celebratory, like saying like how crazy it was, Kurt Hennig and Lesnar wrestling. It was always like sort of portrayed in quite a celebratory. It's like even WWE, I think, did a cartoon about Ric Flair doing the robe thing.
Yeah, they've never shied away from it. It's always been kind of like this was a story from the road. You know, it's very Hangover kind of stag do-esque is how I would describe it.
But to have them to do it from the perspective of the people working on the plane, I mean, like, this was not cool. This was fucking terrifying, and people went through some dark shit. Yeah, and that's why it's so bad when Tommy Dreamer's just like, well, if she was found it bad, then it, maybe she shouldn't have been there. It shouldn't. He never meant it as a bad thing. He wouldn't want to have hurt anybody. That doesn't matter what his intentions were. He still did it, and he still. If she felt even remotely uncomfortable, then it was wrong and it was bad. Yeah.
Do you know what seems totally crazy to me is that this would have taken place in May 2002, which is less than one calendar year from 9/11, when maybe loads of people would have been a little bit like, maybe we should be on our best behaviour on planes.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Yeah, don't go body slamming Brock Lesnar into the door.
Could you imagine seeing that? If you were just like on a plane, just going to New York or something.
I like to think in my head that he got perfect plexed into a door.
So repercussions wise, at the time, Kurt Hennig was fired, but then died. So he got away with it. The cheeky shit. Scott Hall was fired. And Flair got a pass because he was basically Mr.
He's Ric
You
Flair.
can't do anything to Ric Flair, can you? He's Ric Flair. Until now, of course, when this is now all come up again, and who knows, will it be a storm in a teacup? Apparently, Flair's woo was removed from the WWE intro video package last night on Raw.
I mean, that's been a long time coming anyway. He turned up on Triple A Hub a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, obviously rumours of him going to AEW and getting involved in managing Andrade. You would think Tony Khan, the kind of guy he is and the kind of company AEW would try to be, they might stay away from this for a little while and let it die down. Who knows?
Yeah, he will show up, but it'll probably be 4 or 5 months' time.
Yeah.
I have a feeling Ric Flair might be done. I think this could be catch up to him and maybe he might be finished, to be honest.
I don't think so. Well, maybe. It's Ric Flair.
The thing is that take a relatively comparable story of Hogan. Hogan was a top star of the same era, did and said some atrocious things, and rightfully, people were like, actually, do you know what? Fuck Hulk Hogan. And even now, like, WWE have welcomed him back into the fold, but fans absolutely have not welcomed him back.
Certain section of the fans have, otherwise WWE wouldn't bring him back.
And I guess for any fans that were on the fence, there was proof with Hulk Hogan, wasn't there, of what he said and what he did. Whereas all those fans who are like, who want to deny this kind of thing could happen, that their hero could do it, be like, well, he said it didn't happen, so I believe him. Woo. Anyway, we should probably move on from Dark Side of the Ring. But it was great to watch, and they've got some interesting episodes coming up, I noticed, on season 3. They've got a special on the double life of Chris Kanyon. They've got Blood and Wire, Anita's FMW. So special on some of those exploding barbed wire matches. And yeah, the Many Faces of Luna Vachon coming up in October.
Ooh. Got one about Nick Gage coming up.
And finally, United States versus Vince McMahon, the steroid trials. Anyway.
Yeah, the one about Chris Kanyon is going to be very interesting. Very fascinating figure. It's a shame what happened with him.
Yeah. Okay, that's Dark Side of the Ring discussed. Let's have a little break and come back and look at some other news stories.
Martinez face off the edge of the ring. That's one of the hardest part of the rings there.
Okay, so we're looking at some of the recent news stories. There's loads of stuff permanently going on at the moment with the two big companies going at it. And obviously, I think WWE are reacting now because of that main event looked very tasty on Raw. Haven't watched it, but that's a pay-per-view level main event there. We are going to talk about some of the news that's coming out, and it's going to start things off. It is WWE. It's not a main roster, though. It's NXT 2.0. Sam.
So, again, like very much in reaction to AEW, NXT has gone through some major changes, not least of all in design and kind of rebranding itself as NXT 2.0. And there's a lot to take away from this, from new look and feel, new direction. It sounds to me like Triple H has perhaps been removed from...
He had a heart attack, didn't he? Or a cardiac
event? He didn't have a heart
event?
attack, but he had heart surgery.
Cardiac event.
Cardiac event.
I think that's what they say now, because heart attack scares people.
And yeah, it sounds to me like kind of NXT going in a direction which was sort of the old direction, really, kind of bringing back developmental wrestlers and bringing it back to its roots as a wrestling show for green wrestlers, as opposed to almost somewhere for indie stars to congregate.
Yeah, it's interesting because my immediate reaction is to want to completely shit on it because I watched it, not all properly. I sort of skipped through quite a lot of it, but I hated the presentation. I think the logo looks shit. I don't like the fact they're calling it 2.0.
No.
I thought,
just reminds me of Matt Hardy.
Weird. It was too bright. And there was loads of wrestlers. I had no idea who they were.
Yeah.
So that's immediately like shitting on it. But I guess it's quite, in a way, it might be a clever move because there are a lot of people who are going to be interested in watching some developmental. It's a long time since they have actually focused on developing their own talent. It's much better than seeing our favourite indie wrestlers go there and then not get utilised properly and then move to the main roster and it all go wrong. And it maybe just lets all those great guys go to a company where we'll enjoy them more at AEW. I don't know.
I am a little bit on board with this, more than I thought I would be, in the fact that, for me, NXT's strongest point was probably around about 2014 or so, when it was just about bringing in indie stars, but at this point in time, you kind of had the Four Horsewomen kind of all coming through at the same time. You had Enzo and Cass, who, rightly or wrongly, were really hot in NXT.
Yeah.
God, I'd totally forgotten about that. But yeah, they were.
Tyler Breeze, Hideo Itami, Finn Balor.
Breeze, good Lord.
Obviously, Finn Balor was a major kind of player, but he was the exception as opposed to the rule. And then kind of
insane.
The Vaudevillains, NXT was a very exciting place.
I can't believe you chucked them in there.
I don't know, but legitimately, in 2014, 2015, it was exciting because you had all of these kind of half-baked, almost it was developmental wrestling ideas kind of coming together. Some gimmicks didn't land, some did land, and it made a really good show. People were really invested in a lot of these wrestlers, kind of Blake and Murphy and Alexa Bliss were, again, huge. And it was like, these guys who are they? No one knows. And I think there's something to developing them from scratch. I don't know if lightning's going to strike twice with this one, because the first person they've kind of pinned the colours to the mast with is Bron Breakker, who is better known as Rick Steiner Jr.
Oh, right. Oh, I think I did see it. Does he wear gear similar to him as well?
He does.
Well, what about Von? What's his name? He was actually in the main event. It's not Von Erich. What is it? What is him? Von Wagner.
Von Wagner, was he in the main event? I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't
in the
remember
NXT
that.
Ciampa match, Ciampa, Dunn, LA Knight, and Von Wagner.
Okay.
Anyway,
You can tell how
I thought
much
that
I was.
tell you how
watching
much
that
you were
point.
paying attention.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't
They're
know. Throwing a lot of shit at the wall, as in there were lots of new wrestlers on this, and a lot of them, they look very green, and there was some issues with chemistry. But I guess that's kind of like, an under-23s team in the Premier League. They're not all going to make it, but one or two will, and then they'll be brought up in that WWE style. They'll wrestle that WWE style. They're not going to be like, I wish I was doing loads more flips and chops and stuff like the indie guys. I think it'll work out. It could work out.
I think for years and years and years, WWE have been kind of cannibalizing their audience by kind of having these huge stars be successful on NXT, and then when they bring them up to the main roster, it's either a case of try and repeat what they've already done with them or try and kind of make it fit. And we've seen it happen so many times where they've come up to the main roster and it's not worked. And I think it's because they've peaked too early in NXT. And I think maybe resetting the gauge on NXT might be a good move, because let's be honest, it's not Dynamite. It's not close to AEW.
It used to be, though. I'd say it was better than Dynamite when Dynamite first started.
Oh, yeah, 2017-18 NXT was just the best. When it was an hour long and we had the start of Ciampa Gargano and all that, DIY, it was incredible.
This is the biggest problem, though, with that, is that kind of Dynamite is the end goal in AEW. You don't want to go higher than Dynamite. So you're always going to be building on that. NXT is not the end goal for most of the wrestlers there.
Unless you're Johnny Gargano, I guess.
Unless you're Johnny Gargano. And in which case, kind of, even as great as Johnny Gargano is anyone as excited for him now as they were 3 years ago?
No.
I'm
a bit more negative on this. I think this is the death nail of NXT.
It very much could be.
I just think with Vince getting involved,
Kevin
Dunn was directing it as well, apparently. It's just like when Vince did ECW, I think what people like about NXT is that it's different from main roster. You don't want it to be the same.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine viewers are going to go down a lot because I'm not going to watch it.
No.
Because if I had all the time in the world, to watch other wrestling, then yeah, maybe, or whatever. But I've got to pick and choose what I want to watch, and I'm all in with AEW now. I'm actually watching Dynamite and Rampage every week, and that's 4 hours. And then I'm keeping up to date with main roster WWE because there's still some wrestlers I like on there, and we're going to watch the odd pay-per-view. I'm not going to keep up to date with this. It doesn't look great. There's loads of people I'm not fussed about. If somebody says there was a 5-star match, like with NXT UK when Dragunov and Volta have a great match, then we'll go and have a little look. But that's as far as it'll go.
The key thing for me is that, like, I think resetting it could kill NXT. It could go kind of back to the days of yore. For me, I'm happy just to leave it doing its thing, come back to it in 6 months and kind of see, like, hey, is this good or is this crap?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We could do like
tactically for them
biannual NXT dipstick test. Just have a little dip in every 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should watch. When a takeover comes along, maybe we'll have a little look. Anyway, so yeah, that's interesting to see how that all develops. Of course. Next story, John. What have you got for us? Talking of AEW.
AEW. So everyone who listens to this pod probably already knows this, but AEW Dynamite beat Raw in one of the key demographic viewer ratings for the last 2 weeks in the demographic for 18 to 49-year-olds. So that's the two Dynamites post All Out. So I just think it's really interesting, like how big an impact that's going to have on AEW moving forward, and how do WWE care? How will they respond? What do you guys think? Come on.
Old guys love WWE. That's so funny. It's just the idea, like, how many people over 50 are watching wrestling still? And will I be one of those?
You're only a few years off.
Yeah, well, I think it's big because, that's the demographic. That's the demographic going to live shows. Those are the ones with disposable incomes. They're probably buying merch, buying subscriptions. Those are the people you probably want. So I think it's big deal that AEW are beating them.
Well, they're the people as well who've been watching WWE since they were kids.
Yeah.
Because it was happening when they were kids. And so the idea that kids nowadays, or teenagers or people in their 20s are watching AEW more is pretty exciting, because then when they're in their 50s, you'd imagine they'll still be pretty tied to that product. I think it's great. I think it's what AEW want.
Yeah.
That's the demographic they will want. And I think Vince won't necessarily be that bothered.
I mean,
it's hard to tell.
This is a weird one, isn't it? Because what WWE, what it sounds like they're saying, and then what they're actually doing sound contradictory, in the fact that kind of, it sounds to me like what they're saying a lot of the time is we're not competing, we're kind of doing our own thing and all of that. But then when you see what they're doing, it's like, random title change, huge match, Raw main event, draft coming up, retooling the entire show, which was competing with Dynamite, whether they want to admit it or not. It's kind of, it doesn't quite match up. But then I think ultimately the most telling thing is that, in the most recent earnings call, WWE were making record profit, and they've just signed that deal with Saudi to do another show over there, which is going to earn them so much money. And it's just like, from a profit perspective, do you know what? Yeah, WWE are probably smashing it in ways that they've never done so before. It's almost like money making money, but
yeah, I
don't think WWE is kind of a good thing to watch at this point in time for a wrestling fan. It just feels like
there's good stuff there. I mean, SmackDown's still pretty good. I mean, Raw can do the occasional good thing. But yeah, if you're good wrestling, it's Dynamite.
Yeah.
It could have big impact if there are the rumors of a potential set, like Vince selling WWE, because they don't want those news stories going around that they're being beaten in the ratings.
I still can't see Vince ever selling WWE.
It feels there's something weird going on there, though. All the cuts, the changes, it definitely feels like they're getting ready to do something.
He is an old man. Like, there's at some point he's going to need to do something. I don't know, but you're right. You probably want to keep it in the family. Who knows? But it's exciting. It's an exciting time. Really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, back in the heyday, WCW were beating Raw in the ratings completely for, I think, was it 84 84 weeks. So AEW is only one demographic, and they've only got 2 weeks. But
yeah,
who knows?
It's great. But what's interesting now is obviously how much, if you think about what a power play, what a big move, getting Adam Cole, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, everything they've done in the last few weeks, and how much effect it's had. Now it's got to be a slow burn. Like they can't, no matter what happens now, they can't just sign another superstar because it's clearly not going to.
You're going to run out of stars.
Make a huge difference.
Yeah, and
I think they just need to prove themselves as the place to go for quality storylines and quality matches.
I was looking at figures over time, so like Dynamite viewership over the last since it launched over the last 2 years, have steadily been going up. But just before CM Punk debuted, like a few weeks before, it dropped really, really low. But obviously since then, it's been skyrocketing. Raw, on the other hand, has had a slow decline over the last 2 years, but not a huge amount. But it has definitely, it is like trending down rather than up, whereas Dynamite's the opposite.
I think it's probably similar to in a lot of those American households. It's like watching EastEnders.
Yeah.
People have grown up, and Monday night we watch 3 hours of Raw, and a lot of people, they have it on. Maybe they're doing other stuff, but just because it's a bit shit for a while, they're not necessarily going to turn over to another company where they don't know any of the wrestlers, and they stick with what you know. And we're tied to WWE. We love the history of it. We know that it's got so much history, all the different events and amazing wrestlers. So
it ebbs and flows, doesn't it? That's the thing.
Give in.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think WWE is on a quite massive downswing. And it will pick itself back up eventually.
Yeah. Speaking of AEW, the next story is based around the thing that came up on social media, and I was quite surprised by this a day ago or a couple of days when this episode comes out. AEW's partnership with the Owen Hart family, basically they're actually going to celebrate his legacy properly, mostly because the family are behind it, and obviously Martha Hart, who has previously said that she doesn't want WWE to put Owen in the Hall of Fame, and she sort of feels as if they're responsible for his death. There just hasn't. There's never really been the opportunity to celebrate his life and his legacy and everything. So AEW are going to be the guys to do it. They're going to have a tournament, an annual tournament called the Owen Hart Cup. The trophy is going to be called the Owen, which I think is a nice touch. They're putting Owen in their AEW console video game, which is pretty exciting as well. There's going to be Owen Hart merch available on the store. I mean, some of it's like, oh, okay, so you're just going to be making money, but a lot of it's going to go to the Owen Hart Foundation, and obviously that supports some incredible causes. And it's just another tick and another win for AEW. Like it
really is.
This is going to sound so awful. Is the Owen Hart Foundation like a charity towards faulty harnesses?
Weirdly, I looked up a quick description of what it was, and what it does as a charity did seem quite vague.
I just assumed it was an incredible cause.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure. Let me just try and protect ourselves legally.
The Calgary-based non-profit exists to honour Owen by providing opportunities for hardworking people who have limited resources and unlimited potential.
Okay.
The foundation provides scholarships, housing, and various forms of assistance to at-risk communities around the world, including doing food drives, backpack giveaways, and Christmas projects.
Okay, that's good. That's cool.
Anyway, I mean, speaking of Dark Side of the Ring, there was an episode on Owen's death that came out in 2020, which, of course, I was about to say is a good watch, but are any of them a good watch? But it's just AEW are pretty savvy and clever. This is coming from a good place, I have no doubt, and they will have dealt with it sensitively, speaking to the family. But it's just like a big fuck you to WWE.
This is it. Well. Is that everything AEW are doing at the moment? It's always the right move at the right time with the right people.
What'll be weird though is they won't be able to use any footage of him wrestling
in WWF.
I don't think.
Yeah,
I think he probably only wrestled WWF, and maybe
he would have done some Stampede. Surely.
But don't WWE own all the Stampede stuff?
Do they?
But guys, the Owen Hart Cup, that's exciting, right? Because this could be it could be their G1.
Yeah,
could be their G1. Could they, they might structure it like that. And as we've said, they've got these different belts, but the idea of having a tournament or a cup, fucking
This is
cool.
what I was getting excited about the other day. It sounds great.
Yeah,
I love a tournament
Yeah.
of wrestling.
Yeah, same.
it's going to be great.
Insert some cheeky news in here.
Yeah, go on then.
Tetsuya Naito injured out of the G1.
Oh,
Yeah, I saw that.
Gone.
Gone.
Who's
what do
your
you mean?
Who's your bet for the G1 then?
Mate, I don't actually know who's taking part this year.
It's very uninspiring, the brackets from what
Is
I've
it?
seen and heard. Yeah, it looks pretty
I'm a little
terrible.
bit checked out on New Japan at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure I'll kind of swing back to it. I think kind of once COVID passes and you end up getting guest wrestlers back in kind of Japan again, it'll be quite good.
And finally, final piece of news. I just wanted to chuck this in because I read about this today and thought, wow, I had no idea. Keith Lee has returned to WWE live shows. He's been missing for quite a while. Turns out he had COVID, and turns out there was some quite bad complications. And he got it in January, was off television for about 3 weeks. He then came back for a match against Riddle, but he got a call next day to say that there was something off in his blood. And he said, I quote from Keith Lee, "Some people may have experienced this thing where there's like an inflammation in the heart or lungs. For me, it was the heart. That led to very scary times. I was basically forbidden from training or any activity outside of a light walk. There was a fear that doing much more than that there was a chance I could just get up and pass away."
Oh,
Wow.
God. Wow.
So he, 3 or 4 months, he was having MRIs on his heart, and obviously terrifying period, just not knowing what was going to happen. And then basically the inflammation just naturally went down. He's been working house shows. He's got his little goatee beard back, and hopefully we'll see him again.
Keith Bearcat Lee now.
Yeah, I saw that.
I saw the headline that he got a new name, but I didn't click on it. Is that what it is? Bearcat?
Yeah.
Keith Bearcat Lee. I don't mind Bearcat. Sounds kind of cool.
Apparently he's doing it in homage to a wrestler who used to wrestle basically a long time ago, who refused to kind of take part in shows that included segregation. So, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I can't shit on it now, Sam, can I? Bloody hell.
I mean, can you shit on Bearcat? That's quite a cool
Don't
combo.
like it. Don't like it.
Get out. We're done with this pod.
What would you prefer? Horse dog?
Horse dog.
What 2 animals would you like?
Ooh, what 2 animals? Mole, wheat, no. Let me think. Let me come back to you on that.
Mole
one.
weasel. Were you
Mole
about to go
weasel.
with?
Yeah.
Anyway, that is it for our news roundup. Hopefully people learnt some stuff. We shall see. I did put out on Twitter that we were going to be doing this, and it was quite short notice, and I said, is there anything you guys would like us to talk about? And MJ from You Total Cult was the only one to respond, and he said, will there ever be a boy born who can swim faster than a shark? Yes.
Probably not a boy, but I reckon a girl.
I was
Ooh, I
wondering
like
if
it.
you could eat your own shoes if you landed in the jungle, but sure.
It depends what your shoes were, I guess. Like hamburgers, then yeah.
We're not just doing office quotes. Is that our thing?
Okay, I get it now. Next podcast will be the Summer Quiz 2021, unless Brett just forgets that he's ever done a podcast. But I'm confident that he'll be back. We're not quite sure. Are we going to do that next week?
We hope so.
I think we are. In fact, I will guarantee it to you. We will be back next week to do the Summer Quiz 2021. We're retiring the Baron Corbin vest. Somebody needs to win it.
You might as well pre-schedule the apology tweet now, Adam.
I know. No, it's an Adam Richardson guarantee. And if you want to get in touch with us, I'll just do this quick. hardestpartofthering@gmail.com, social media, Hardest Part Pod, buy us a virtual coffee, ko-fi.com/HPOTR. Well, that was fun. Did you enjoy that, guys?
Yeah, that was good.
Always lovely.
Always a delight to talk to you. Right, Sam and I are going to get back to the gym. These physiques won't keep themselves
Well done,
or
guys.
something.
No, I'll say my physique is kind of very much set in its way.
All right. Well, thank you, Sam.
The Giraffigator, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, guys.
Goodbye. Thank you for listening. That was the Hardest Part of the Ring.
That is the hardest part of that ring.
On the hardest part of the ring. The hardest part of the
I think I'd like to mix it up, to be honest. I think sometimes I want to be on top, sometimes I'd want to be on bottom.
Yeah.
Hello, hello and welcome to episode.